Hey folks, I'm Sophia Lemon, and I photograph ridiculously happy people. Recently, I had the opportunity to speak to my BNI chapter about what I think is the most important part of my job. To me, it is not enough to take fantastic photos for my clients. If I don't send them home with printed artwork, I have not done my job and they have wasted potentially thousands of dollars. That is what this presentation is all about, and in it, I'm going to tell you, like I told my BNI chapter, exactly why that is. I take really good photos. So I tell you that I photograph ridiculously happy people. For me, that doesn't mean that I photograph weddings or I photograph families. I want to work with my clients through every exciting stage of their life. So I just wanted to show you some examples of that. So proposals. This is Neralian Krenal. Right after he proposed, she knew it was coming. She's still that excited. Engagements. This is Melissa and Janine. Weddings. Jenna and Jesse. Maternity. This is Danielle of Stephen and Danielle. Families, this is the Zoo family. Beauty, this is Cheryl. And then everyone's favorite, boudoir. I'm not going to tell you who that is. So these are my mother's parents. You might notice that my grandfather's last name is Lemon. That is a story for a different day. But I never met my mother's parents. They both passed before I was born. And for me, if it weren't for their 70 billion printed photos, I would not know what they looked like. And if it wasn't for my mother's stories, I probably wouldn't know that I likely got my sense of humor from them. So for me, the wedding album, for example, or prints are an essential part of every photography package. It's not enough for me to give you a USB stick with a bunch of files on it and make you deal with it. So for me, that comes in the form with a wedding, for example, as an album. I've handed out albums. I see they are taking their time getting around. If you can't figure out how to get into that one, I can give you a hand. And with portrait packages and families, that looks a little bit more like a print credit. For me, I really want people to get something that suits their home decor, their style. So I actually sit down with people and help them pick what they're going to hang in their home. It's so much more than prints or framed prints or canvases. For example, this one. This is a reclaimed barn board canvas scroll. So there's locally sourced barn board on both sides. Rather than the canvas being stretched on a frame, it is stretched between the barn boards. Okay, so there's a lot of reasons why it's best for you to work with a professional photographer, especially when it comes to prints. It's so important that your photographer handles this stuff for you. But I want to tell you one particular story. This is Meg and Dan, and before I get into Meg and Dan's story, it might be a little bit sensitive for some people. It is sensitive for me. But I want to assure all of you that I have gotten their enthusiastic permission to share their story, and also will hopefully share with a little bit of a sense of humor, because that's what they would want. So on August 27th, 2016, Meg and Dan saw me photographing their friend's wedding. In November of that year, they emailed me about photographing their wedding, and 2 days after that, we met for coffee and they booked me on the spot. What they wanted for their wedding was 3 things. They wanted to get married, they wanted all their friends and family to have fun, and they wanted spectacular photography. So they're pretty much dream clients. When I was planning their engagement session, so I emailed them January 13th of 2017, and the same day they emailed me back, and this is what Meg had to say. Hey Sophia, I've been meaning to email you for a couple of days, but have been totally overwhelmed by having to do some hardcore adulting. So just before Christmas, I was diagnosed with colon cancer. Worst Christmas present ever. Right now, they're still gathering important information about how to proceed with my treatment and making sure that my liver and lungs haven't decided to join in on the cancer party. None of this has derailed my extensive wedding planning, though. Ha ha ha. I think at this point we would like to find out more about when treatment will start. The tentative plan for my butt is 5 weeks of chemoradiotherapy, followed up by one hell of a surgery, and then more chemo, and plan a bit around that. Sorry to send such a bummer of an email, LOL, but please know that I'm still over the top excited about the wedding and having glorious photos, and can't wait to see Dan and I looking all fancy. I will let you know as soon as possible regarding my treatment schedule so that we can work around that. Cheers, Meg. Many butt jokes ensued. So many. So on May 16th of 2017, we had their engagement session. Shortly after their engagement session, Meg was scheduled for her major surgery. So she had already had one when we did the engagement session. She was outfitted with one ostomy, which is not something that you want to have when you're trying to be ridiculously happy and, you know, romantic and look sexy and stuff. But she pulled it off. So she was scheduled for her major surgery, which was 14 hours long. And in preparation, her friend was putting together a kit for Dan of stuff for him to do during the 14-hour wait. And one of the things that she wanted to do was take this photo and make a puzzle out of it. So in a bit of a rush, I made a puzzle out of this photo. So he put together this 300-piece puzzle while he was waiting for 14 hours. So on September 23rd, 2017, they had their wedding. So I'm just gonna show you what we're working on now. Okay, so this is Meg and Dan's wedding album proof, which we are working on right now. Okay, so their ceremony literally took place 1 week after Meg finished her first round of chemo. So she had her major surgery, she started chemo, and a week later, she had her wedding ceremony. This is one of the very few photos of Meg standing. It's kind of an exhausting day for her. This is their first look. If you didn't know, you probably wouldn't guess based on the excitement. This is my favorite photo in the album. Okay, so for their ceremony, Meg and Dan actually sat through the entire thing while all of their guests stood. Their ceremony was delayed by about half an hour while she suffered through some very unfortunate chemo side effects. Still excited. You'll also see Meg wrapped her IV port with lace to try to cover it up a little bit, because as she would say, it looked pretty gnarly. Throughout their album, I have included lines from their wedding song, which is What I Wouldn't Do by Serena Ryder. So, like I said, for most of their photos, Meg and Dan were sitting, and we took a lot of breaks because, you know, chemo, just not a pleasant thing to deal with. This photo here, one of the few times that we actually got creative photos with her standing. Okay, this is an important saying to Meg and Dan. It's something that Dan says all the time. So since their wedding, Meg has literally been stitched back together. She is still with us doing very well, which is awesome because before her wedding, she was actually told that she should get her affairs in order. So the wedding was a really exciting thing for them. Even better that she's doing really well now. As my presentation was wrapping up, I got a few really good questions from my fellow members. First, they were a little bit curious why it took so long for Meg and Dan to finalize their wedding album. Following their wedding, Meg had some serious complications associated with chemo, and so she was in and out of the hospital for months. It has been over a year since their wedding, and their album hasn't been printed yet, but I am happy to say that we have finally finalized the book. The advantage to my process, from my perspective, is that in that year, Meg and Dan had access to their photos, but at no time did I hand them a USB stick and say, here they are, have fun. Instead, their family and friends were able to order prints from me. They could enjoy their photos, share them on Facebook with their family and friends, and when they were ready to tackle their album, we were able to do that. Next, I was asked if I include an album with each of my wedding packages, and yes, I do. It is so important that my clients go home with a wedding album and not just digital files. In fact, years ago, I sat down with a few of my favorite brides and I asked them, a couple years after their wedding, what did you do with your photos? Do you know what they told me? They said, well, we're going to get them printed. 2 years after their weddings, these brides hadn't done any printing. And I found this was the case with a lot of brides. I would give them a USB stick, they would download some photos, put them on Facebook, and then put that stick in a drawer somewhere and forget about it. The truth is that printing wasn't my client's job. It was my job. So these brides had spent thousands of dollars and had nothing to show for it. What's worse was I had a bride come to me in a panic because her hard drive had corrupted and she had lost all of her wedding photos. Luckily, I keep a backup of everything I shoot, so I was able to replace those photos, but I realized the serious error in how I was handling my clients' prints. And finally, I was asked what I include with my family packages and portrait packages. You heard in my presentation that I include a print credit. After my portrait sessions, I sit down with each of my clients for an in-person photo viewing and print consultation. The reason I do this is because in the past I had sent a gallery along to my clients, let them look at their photos, and then ask them what they want to do with them. Way too often, people would say, I don't know. If I send you a price list with just a bunch of numbers and nothing tangible to look at, the likelihood that you're going to choose the cheapest option rather than the best option is very high. So what I do in my in-person consultations is we sit down and go through each photo. And then we go through them again to mark which ones you love and which ones you don't care so much for. What we can do after that is narrow down which photos you want to be printed and how you want to have them printed. Another advantage to the in-person proofing is that I can literally show you what your photos will look like on your wall. I can take a photo of your wall, put it in my computer, and blow up your photos on your wall. It's magical and a little bit sci-fi and super cool. My clients find it really helpful because they know that a 4x6 or a 5x7 isn't going to look right above their mantle, but instead they need a 30x60. So ultimately what my clients get is artwork they love in the right size and the right finishings. So that's about it for my presentation. Before I wrap up though, I do want to send a shout out to Ben Frisch of Be Fresh Media, one of my fellow BNI members, who brought a microphone for me so that I could be heard in the video of my presentation. So thanks a lot, Ben. You were a big help. If you'd like to connect with me, you can contact me through my website at sophialemon.com, and you can also follow me on Instagram, Pinterest, and Facebook. I'm Sophia Lemon, and I photograph ridiculously happy people, and I'll see you soon!